Way from Connecticut, where I pleasurably serve as the Assistant Director for the Office of Student Diversity and Multicultural Affairs at Fairfield University. But in this space, I am occupying as the moderator for this amazing conversation, Gen Z Feminist Campus Life at Jesuit Institutions. We have some amazing, fabulous student speakers here that have worked so hard tirelessly since the summer and even more vigorously leading up to the weeks for NWSA to bring you some challenging, mind-boggling topics as we really wrestle with what these Jesuit values are and some of the campus issues and challenges that our students are currently facing. So before we get into our actual roundtable discussion, I'm going to invite our panelists to please introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Liz Morin. I am a junior at Fairfield University in Connecticut, and I am an English and digital journalism double major with a minor in women, gender, and sexuality studies.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca. I'm a sophomore at Fairfield University. My major is behavioral neuroscience, and I have minors in women's gender and sexuality studies and health studies.
Hi guys, my name is Faize Alachkar, and I'm a student at Detroit University. I'm a bio major with a women and gender studies minor and leadership minor.
Hello. Hi, my name is Genesis Barnes. I am a senior at University of Detroit Mercy, majoring in criminal justice / intelligence analysis, while also being a psychology and women and gender studies minor.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Morgen Rhodes. I am a junior at the University of Detroit Mercy, originally from Marion, Ohio. I am in the honors program. I am majoring in political science. I have a legal studies certification. I have a minor in philosophy, and I have a minor in women's and gender studies.
Hi everybody, my name is Katharine Gutkoski. I'm a junior from Fairfield University. I'm also in the honors program. I am the first women, gender, sexuality studies major at the college, which is very exciting. I double majored out with theater, and I am a minor in communication studies as well.
Can we please give these fabulous panelists a hand? They are already groundbreaking, as we know, in our feminist pedagogy. It's a pleasure to be here to speak with them all today. So as you heard, we have two universities represented here this morning. And what I'm here to talk about a little bit today, just when we think of the foundation of Jesuit institutions, right? So laying the groundwork a little bit for you all before we get into this discussion. So when we think about what a Jesuit is, a Jesuit refers to a member of the Society of Jesus, which is a Roman Catholic religious order. They were founded in 1540 by St. Ignatius of Loyola, and the Jesuits are really known for their commitment to education, social justice, and missionary work, right? So keep that in mind as we go into our discussion. Jesuits are noted for being intellectually rigorous, right? They have founded many schools, like our two schools today. They're also known leaders in the church and educators in our society. And even the Jesuit motto, I'm probably going to butcher this, ad majorem Dei gloriam, right? For the greater glory of God. So when we think about this topic today, I encourage you all to listen to these fabulous students as we tug and pull with these different challenges that we're facing at our Jesuit institutions, right? And when we think about particularly commitment to education, missionary work, and social justice, right? Challenge yourselves to think about this question. Are our Jesuit institutions adequately addressing these challenges and needs that our students are currently facing in today's society? Thinking about social work and missionary work in particular in regards to education, these students are going to take you down to some very different interesting challenges, topics, and really challenge you all to think if these Jesuit institutions are adequately adding up to the measure of their foundational values. So I am going to stop talking and leave room for these fabulous students to bring us into the conversation of this roundtable this morning. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz to begin our discussion. Thank you so much.
All right. So my individual paper is called From Eve to evil, tracing the roots of misogyny in literature's powerful women. In literature, women who challenge societal norms are often cast as the villains or as evil, and this reflects historical anxieties around female power. So I'm going to use characters like Eve, Lady Macbeth, and Amy Dune from Gone Girl to exemplify how literature shapes perceptions of powerful women and frames them as evil. So the portrayal of Eve as the origin of sin is foundational to misogynistic beliefs. Created from Adam's rib, she's often blamed for humanity's downfall due to her choice to eat the forbidden fruit. Many have used this narrative to justify the idea that women are inherently sinful and should be subordinate to men. There are several interpretations to the story of Adam and Eve. Since the publication of the Bible in the 15th century, many readers have taken the story literally, word for word. Since Eve was created from man, women are a derivative of men, and since Eve disobeyed God, women are disobedient, and since she convinced Adam to eat the fruit, women are disobedient, like I said. This story is taken too literally and is the root of misogyny today. Lady Macbeth embodies these fears of women in Shakespeare's Macbeth. As an ambitious wife who challenges her husband's masculinity, she's often seen as an agent of hell. She manipulates Macbeth to commit murder, wielding power over him in a way that was threatening to Elizabethan audiences, which casts her as a figure akin to Eve. Lady Macbeth has frequently been compared to Eve. One quote from Lindsay Harlow states that she tempts her husband to both murder and madness, much like Eve in Pandora. Eve threatened her husband's masculinity by asserting more dominance than him. Similarly, Lady Macbeth questions and threatens her husband's masculinity throughout the play, mocking him, saying, "Are you a man? And when you durst do it, then you were a man, and to be more than what you were, you would be so much more a man." Elizabethan society believed this language by a woman was shameful to her husband, even though a man could speak to a woman like that. Her goal in manipulating Macbeth to get what she wants is precisely the view of Eve getting Adam to sin by eating the fruit. In Gone Girl, Amy Dune is a modern version of the evil woman. She frames her husband for abuse and disappearance, embodying traits of both a psychopath and a woman in rebellion against her expected role. Her actions challenge the cool girl ideal, and many readers view her as a terrifying figure. Amy Dune is often misunderstood, as many readers think she faked her disappearance with no cause. However, it is crucial to look at her cool girl monologue to fully understand. I'll read a little bit. She's a cool girl. Being the cool girl means I am the hot, brilliant, funny woman who adores football, poker, dirty jokes. It continues on. This monologue sheds light on the expectations of women and how they must give up everything to please men. While cool girl was not really a concept in the 15th century and prior, and encapsulates Eve's frustrations with her entire existence revolving around a man. When female characters break the mold that is expected of them by men, they become the villains. While male villains like Iago or Patrick Bateman are often admired, powerful female villains evoke discomfort. This discomfort reflects a societal bias. Male villains are seen as strong and complex, while female villains are deemed unnatural. The stories of Eve, Lady Macbeth, and Amy Dune reveal an enduring tendency to villainize women who defy expectations, ultimately revealing society's discomfort with female autonomy. The impact of these portrayals on young girls in the education system can be significant. As they encounter these texts, they may internalize the message that ambitious, assertive, or independent women are destined to be punished or seen as evil. This can discourage girls from fully expressing their abilities, fearing that their strengths could be met with suspicion or rejection. Literature, ideally, should encourage diverse expressions of womanhood, but when these narratives dominate the classroom, they risk limiting how girls envision their roles in society. Thank you.
Hi again, everyone. I am a pre-health professions member of the program at Fairfield University, and I'm looking to one day go into healthcare as a physician assistant. This goal led me to gravitate toward a topic relating to the healthcare system when I was deciding what I wanted to speak about today. As I'm sure many of you have experienced firsthand, there are ever-present instances of structural injustice interwoven within healthcare. This disparity begins at the foundation of our system through the lack of inclusion of female participants or female animals in the preclinical and clinical trials of medical research. In conveying this topic, I will begin with a discussion of the reasons why women face numerous obstacles when it comes to seeking out healthcare. The healthcare system in the United States was built upon blatant examples of misogyny. This enduring attitude toward women is evident through terms like female hysteria. This word hysteria was first used in ancient Greece, meaning uterus. Having female body parts was equated with a lesser status or lack of autonomy in healthcare. When women were suffering from mental or physical illnesses that had an unexplainable cause, early doctors in the United States frequently attributed them to a woman being overly dramatic, emotional, or crazy. Hysteria was used as a blanket term and an official diagnosis. It was not removed from the DSM until 1980. Not only did using this term perpetuate harmful stereotypes about women, but it also failed to acknowledge their real concerns about their health. These same misogynistic and dismissive attitudes towards women's health concerns have persisted. While many healthcare workers do not purposely aim to treat women differently or discriminate against them, it is critical to evaluate how these prejudices have contributed to implicit biases. Implicit biases can dramatically impact the care that women receive as they prevent practitioners from adequately addressing their symptoms. Without this, women cannot receive a proper diagnosis. According to Dr. David Newman-Toker, a professor of neurology at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, women are 20% to 30% more likely than white men to experience a misdiagnosis. From this number alone, it is clear how large of an impact these biases can have on a woman's ability to access proper care. Additionally, the intersectional nature of these biases is clear, as women of color are also likely to experience racism from healthcare providers. Pregnancy-related deaths are a telling example of this, as according to the CDC, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. If these subconscious blind spots are not addressed within healthcare, women will continue to receive subpar care and even die if their needs fall through the cracks. Furthermore, women and female animal subjects remain underrepresented in medical research, and this is both through preclinical and clinical trials. Women's health concerns in relation to medical research were not acknowledged until the government passed the NIH Revitalization Act in 1993. This act finally required women to be included as participants in some capacity in clinical trials. However, this same standard is not the case even today for preclinical trials with non-human subjects. As recently as 2009, only 80% of preclinical trials included both male and female animals. One of the main reasons continually cited for this is hormones, as the cyclical nature of female hormone levels are considered to create an additional confounding variable. This convenient excuse continues the trends of excluding the needs of women from treatments and innovations in healthcare. As a STEM major, I have already been exposed to a large amount of research within the field of behavioral neuroscience, particularly in last semester when I took a drugs, brain, and behavior course. I was disheartened by the minimal number of preclinical trials that included female rats alongside males, and this was even the case at my own institution. My female professor, Dr. Shannon Harding, is passionate about representing women's interests in her research at Fairfield, but this was not the case for other professors, even at my small Jesuit Catholic university. It is startling to see how these ever-present structural inequalities play out even on a small scale at my own school. While it can be difficult to be constantly reminded of the lack of representation for women within medical research, there are steps that we can take, even as students, to work toward greater gender equity. To start, we can educate ourselves about the areas in which medical research is lacking on women's health issues. We can also become knowledgeable about the specific research goals we are getting involved in before we join on projects with our professors. This will ensure that we are doing our part to expand gender diversity within research. Social media can act as an invaluable resource in this goal, providing a mode for digital community and female empowerment. If we work to be more vocal about our own experiences and struggles within the healthcare system, we can raise a greater awareness. It is painfully evident that there is a glass ceiling present in the medical field, continuing to hold women back. Approximately 75% of people working in healthcare are women, and only a fraction of these upper level of leadership positions are occupied by these women. Women also contribute greatly to medical innovations, as demonstrated through Caitlin Carrico's work on the mRNA vaccine for SARS-CoV-2. Social media allows us to amplify female voices in healthcare so that we can work to support more women taking positions of power and leadership. Having women in leadership positions will create more diverse perspectives and further this gender equity. Women make up half of the world's population, so we must join together to ensure that the medical community begins to take our health concerns seriously. Women contribute so greatly to the field of medicine, so the same level of effort should be put into research for female health conditions. If female healthcare workers encourage their patients and one another to speak up for their own needs, we can create an environment of empowerment and begin dismantling the system of patriarchy within medicine. Thank you.
Thinking far along just with the topic of women, even just thinking about, of course, just the most recent election, of course, right? And not even to dig so deep into the topic, but thinking about our generation, essentially, of women voters, right? And thinking just about even our education, going back to what we started to talk about with Liz, thinking about our literature, right? This is what we are experiencing in our classrooms at Jesuit institutions, right? In the beginning, I encourage you to think about social justice, right? When we're thinking about social justice, women's issues, women's health issues, right? Perfect example, Fairfield University is known for our Egan School of Nursing. A lot of students come to Fairfield for Egan School of Nursing. And even when we think about the dynamics of, who is in nursing, a lot of it is women. These are young women that are entering into the nursing field to think about how that they can bring about change, or ironically, to change the system at play. So continue to keep this theme of women in education in your mind as we continue on to our next discussion.
My name is Faize, and my topic is about microaggressions against women in the workplace. So, like I mentioned, I'm a bio major at Detroit Mercy, and I'm pre-dental. When a lot of people hear that I'm pre-dental, they get surprised, and I used to wonder, why don't they think that I could be a dentist just because I'm a woman, just because I wear a hijab, just because I'm a fun person. They don't expect me to be a doctor in the future. So I wanted to write my topic about this, and I'm going to begin with defining microaggressions. So it's a statement or an action of indirect or subtle unintentional discrimination against women, against members, well in this case I'm using women. So many women face microaggressions, especially in the medical field. They often create an environment where women feel minimized and overlooked. There are subtle actions that affect a woman's job satisfaction and mental well-being. For young women entering the workforce, understanding microaggressions is very critical. They are more likely to face this because of colleagues, managers, or peers, and they might feel like a challenge to address it. So women in the workplace will encounter various forms of microaggressions. They will give doubts on their capability in the fields that are traditionally dominated by male coworkers. Effects of this will cause a woman to feel minimized. So for me personally, I had to go and shadow a few dentists to get in my hours, and I would be watching the dentist doing his job, and the patient would always ask me if I'm going into dental assisting or if I'm his assistant, and I would always laugh it off and say no, I'm not. But then one time I asked the patient, and I was like, why would you think that? And then he's like, because I don't see women, especially young women and pretty women like you in this field. And I was like, okay. So this really opened my eyes, and I spoke about this with my other friends, and they all experienced the same thing. And a few things women can do to combat microaggressions is to foster inclusivity and equity in the workplace. I feel like it's important to be able to have these types of discussions and encourage employees to recognize and correct subtle biases that lead to a more supportive and inclusive environment. Organizations could also implement fundamental reporting of any of these behaviors to make women feel more safe and included. And addressing microaggressions in the workplace requires ongoing awareness and education on the topic. Voices concerns that support each other. Organizations can build more respectful, welcoming environments, and we invite questions and discussions to explore these issues and understanding and drive a positive change in the workplace in the future.
Hello again, and I can definitely agree with Faize with the microaggressions towards women in the workplace, and today I will be speaking a little bit just about navigating a male-dominated career field. I am a criminal justice major as well as an intelligence analysis major. I'm a part of a very good program at Detroit Mercy called the 5-year program, which allows me to study both of these things and get a bachelor's and master's degree within 5 years. And it can be intimidating knowing that I'm entering a male-dominated field. Statistics from 2021 show us that women only make up 13% of law enforcement officers in the United States and only 3% of police leadership roles in the United States, whereas men make up 87% of officers in the United States. And criminal justice is such a small slither, well, not criminal justice, law enforcement, It's such a small slither of criminal justice and the possible career paths and positions that you can have within that large umbrella. So if you can see that much of a difference in percentages just in that small sector, it gives you an idea of how many inequalities against women there are in this field. And then when I further tried to find statistics on Black women in this field, there were little to none out there about Black women and the space they occupy in criminal justice and or intelligence analysis. So, I can relate to Faize and as well as Rebecca with the lack of research towards, certain groups of women on these topics. And I kind of got to get my first taste of the navigating a male-dominated career when I did my internship this past summer. I did my first internship with a company here in the city, and I worked for their security and integrity unit, and only 3 interns were hired. I was one of 3, obviously, and I was the only young woman hired from as far as college students. The other 2 were young men that were hired, and I was working in a heavily male-dominated workplace. There were some women that worked at the company, there were some women that held leadership roles at the company, but overall I was in a heavily male-dominated workplace, so it really opened my eyes to some of the things that I may experience, being a senior, approaching graduation, stepping out into my career field soon. And I did see some of those microaggressions, while I was there. It didn't dawn on me in the moment, but looking back, I was like, I did see and experience some of those things, as well as kind of those double standards. And that my internship was an opportunity for me to practice advocating for myself, which is something that I hope to carry with me into my career, because it will be needed, because I will be, outnumbered. For example, there was this particular facility that I was assigned to work at for a portion of my time, and when I got there, like I said, heavily male-dominated area, but this particular facility and the people that I was assigned to work with were all men. There were no women that worked in this sector at all, and all the men were in their, early to late 30s. So here I am, a young college student, 20-year-old woman coming into this space, and it was uncomfortable, it was something that I had to get used to, and I had to voice my concerns to my supervisor saying, I don't feel that comfortable working in this space, and they were able to accommodate and work for me, but they wouldn't have known that if I hadn't spoke up about that. So that is one reason why I'm very grateful for the Women and Gender Studies program at Detroit Mercy, just for enlightening me on different topics and theories and things. You know, we learn about patriarchy and we learn about intersectionality, and these were things that I wasn't studying before. I kind of added on the minor a little later. I added it on last year, my junior year, so I'm kind of new to studying these topics, but I'm glad because it really has opened my eyes to the different things that women face in society, and then we learn about these different topics, but it also shows me how they show up in society. Rather than just reading about them and writing papers on them, I'm able to use that knowledge and see how it works in society, because we know that women have a harder time advancing, I guess you could say, up the ladder when they have men and, you know, as their supervisors or their bosses, like Rebecca was saying, that glass ceiling theory. And you're less likely to get certain opportunities and, you know, equal pay when they're outnumbered by their male counterparts, which is unfortunately something I have to take into account going into my career. And like I said, I've just been learning a lot from the program, but I mostly hope to continue to internalize what I've learned from the Women and Gender Studies program at Detroit Mercy and use it to be confident to advocate for myself and for others in my career field. Which is why I believe representation is very important. It's important to see and hear from people who you can relate to, who are accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish. And even if they aren't accomplishing the same things as you, just having those people that are able to advocate for you on your behalf, because if we want more women in these male-dominated fields, it's important for us to have ways to see and meet women who are in these areas and share their stories. That's why, you know, conferences such as this one are a great opportunity to network and to meet other people. And that's why when I look around the room in my criminal justice classes, it's majority young women like myself who are studying criminal justice. But unfortunately, when we get out into the real world, it won't look like that. You know, our university itself is more populated with women, just how it is, so that could be a factor in it as well. But you know, when I look at us, I see that we are the future leaders of our generation, and we really just have to stick together and empower each other. That's another reason why I am grateful for my criminal justice program, as well as the university itself, putting the emphasis on community and, you know, work and giving back, because my professors in my program do a really good job at having past graduates come back and talk to us and share their career journeys. The same people that sat in our seats, the same people that studied our same topics, coming back to share their insight, which further gives us that confidence to step out into the real world. And I know Morgen here next to me can relate to just the value of representation and the importance of creating the different spaces in your environment where others can feel heard and understood.
All right, hi again. So, as a freshman at Detroit Mercy, my goal was to plant seeds on campus and lead feminism and social justice into every part of my life, whether it be in the classroom, my extracurriculars, or the connections that I create. So that is predominantly what I'm going to be talking about today and kind of how I did that. So my work in the classroom, again, has been pretty integral to my journey as a feminist. In my political science, law, and philosophy classes especially, I try to challenge the status quo by speaking out and integrating feminist principles into our discussions, even though it's uncomfortable, which is a lot. Within each of my courses, I try to also diversify the topics that I write about and present to my peers, including analyses and critiques of theories, films, books, artwork, specifically through an intersectional feminist lens. I've presented persuasive speeches such as Why We Should All Be Feminists, essays like Women's Agency Through Social Movements,
women's rights and social issues globally, how pornography dehumanizes women, and one of the first essays that I wrote as a freshman, a 26-page paper on how abortion bans are linked to white supremacy, and much more, which was very hard to give in an honors class to freshman students, predominantly made up of Catholics. Not very popular, but did change a few opinions, and that's what made it worth it to me. I'm also working on co-publishing a paper with my professor about gender inequity and women's political participation in Uganda for my Women in Politics class. Moving on from academics, I have also founded the Feminist Coalition my freshman year at Detroit Mercy. So this is an activism and education-based organization on campus. Its main purpose is to fight gender inequity on all fronts. Some events that we have done are PJs Against the Patriarchy. It was one of our first events. Very chill, laid back. We decorated cookies, had talks about the different types of feminism. Barbie feminism, this was very popular on campus. We had a large group discussion about the cultural implications of the Barbie movie. Both professors and students came. Collaborations with other organizations, such as Titan Dreamers, which is an organization that works with undocumented immigrants on campus. We've had discussions with Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is another sorority on campus, about Roe v. Wade and its overturning. We've had protests like Take Back the Night with the Zetas on campus and the Office of Equal Opportunity. We've had clean and cozy events with resident advisors on campus where I've presented sex and hygiene education to other students, which again can be a little bit uncomfortable but is very necessary. I worked with library faculty to set up Women's History Month exhibitions on trailblazing women in Detroit, including the Sisters of Mercy, which I think a lot of people tend to forget about. Even though this is a conversation about Jesuit institutions, I think the Mercy is very important, and they are half of our founders. And we did have some alumni who were talked about in this exhibition too. They came back and visited, and they really enjoyed it. So despite being a small school, we currently have over 60 active members. We've raised over $3,000 in donations, 50 pounds of clothing, and close relationships with families, nonprofits, and other student organizations, both in Detroit and internationally. So aside from FEMCO, I'm also president of the Political Science Student Association, which was very hard to do, especially considering I am kind of the minority view on campus when it comes to my political takes and the way that I present myself. I think that my peers tend to respect me because I try to insert myself in conversation. I try to be outspoken, confident, walk, talk, act like a man. Put yourself out there. And I hate the walk, talk, act like a man. Act like a woman. That's how. Anyways, so I use my role to bring feminist ideals and practices into a nonpartisan space. I'm also working with one of the deans from Detroit Mercy School of Law and our own Latinx student union on Equilaw, which is a campaign that works with elementary through collegiate students to bridge gaps in education and provide extra resources and support for women and girls, especially for Black and Latina girls, because there, of course, are larger gaps in education for women of color, for queer women, for women in under-resourced communities. So that is our primary focus with the Equilaw campaign. Through my work with campus ministry, I have had the chance to participate in advocacy trips like the Ignatius Family Teaching for Justice, or IFTJ, which is a trip to Washington, D.C., and we lobbied for humane immigration policies with Senator Gary Peters. And another option, if you go on that trip, is you can also advocate for more green policies, for environmental policies, and to collaborate with university ministry and co-host events that represent the university's value of cura personalis, or care for the entire person, highlighting the Jesuit commitment to holistic education and personal development. So, leaving a legacy on Detroit Mercy is the goal. So when I stepped onto my Jesuit campus and found that there was no feminist presence among students besides a few professors, and in fact quite the opposite in the student body in terms of the clubs that were available, I didn't just ask for a seat at the table. I flipped the table and I took over the whole damn desk. Excuse my language. Flip the table feminism is about more than just pushing back against the systems. It's about completely tearing down those systems and making sure they can never stand in our way again. With my peers, I've worked to create a space for us to fight for justice, to challenge what's wrong, and to make room for everyone who's ever been left out. In a Catholic, Jesuit, and Mercy education and institution, we're proving that justice and faith can walk hand in hand. And we're showing that a feminist perspective isn't incompatible with our values. It is our values. And that'll continue to be talked about in our next session.
The summer before college, I took a student conduct quiz as part of my online orientation prior to moving onto campus. This was a basic, did you read the student handbook quiz? Do you know the policies on drinking, drugs, sexual assaults, cheating, AI services, etc.? But it was the policy about contraception that caught my eye. Fairfield University is a Jesuit college. I knew this when I applied and decided to attend the school. So I was expecting very traditional thinking. Despite these tempered expectations, well, let's just say the policy made me mad. The policy reads, Fairfield University, a Jesuit Catholic institution, is committed to the dignity of the human person and the goodness of sexual expression as found in the teachings of the Roman Catholic faith. With this as our foundation, we expect our students to form relationships marked by bonds of affection, respect, and care. While we honor the freedom of our students to make decisions as free and responsible persons, and we recognize that persons of goodwill may choose otherwise, as a Catholic institution committed to the dignity of the human person, we, Fairfield employees, students, or club members acting in an official capacity or organizations and events sponsored by the university, will not sell or offer any contraceptive devices or birth control. As soon as I read this policy, I pulled up my phone and recorded my reaction. The video is 3 minutes long, but I'll give you a snippet. I said, people are going to be having sex at college. That's nothing new. But safe sex. Please. At least condoms. It doesn't have to be anything else other than that. I know that birth control isn't a Catholic thing, but aside from the fact that it prevents sperm from meeting egg, STIs, STDs, those are a thing. We need to be safe against those. And so as an institution, isn't it your job to have condoms just in case? Needless to say, I probably should have applied to Fairfield as a WGSS major rather than an undecided major from minute one. But after over 2 years of living on this campus and in this community, my point still stands. As an institution, isn't it the job of the university to prepare students for the real world? A world where sex exists? In response, teachers and deans have said, well, Fairfield doesn't outlaw contraception. You can order it to your mailbox on campus. You can go out and buy it yourself. That prepares you for having to do it yourself and as an adult in the real world. Yes. I suppose it does prepare us for the real world in that weird sense. Go out and fend for yourself. But Fairfield is a university, and one that prides itself on providing its students the modern Jesuit educational experience. Fairfield's motto is Cura Personalis, care for the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. And its contraception policy itself directly says, twice in one paragraph, that Fairfield is committed to the dignity of the human person. So my question still remains. Why does limiting of how students get contraceptives define how Catholic we are as an institution? Why does devotion to our Catholicism trump caring for our students? Outside of the field of contraception, Fairfield does not always practice such a rigid adherence to Catholic doctrine at the sacrifice of its students' real-world needs. For example, its gender-inclusive housing policy reads, Fairfield University houses students consistent with their gender identity rather than perceived sex as required by applicable law. In alignment with the current housing practices, students will be able to live with the roommates of their choosing. Catholicism teaches that gender is binary, man and woman. The church teaches that being part of the LGBTQ+ community is a sin, and that gender identity does not exist. You are the sex you were born with. A college housing standard adhering to this Catholic doctrine would house students only according to the sex with which they were born. But Fairfield does not follow this teaching. The university instead houses students consistent with their gender identity. Does that make us less Catholic than other universities? Does that make us less Catholic than other people in the Catholic community as a whole? Both last semester and this semester, Fairfield's Health Center sent out an email about free STI testing. If you test positive, you can be treated for the STI, but due to Fairfield's policy, the Health Center cannot offer ways to prevent STIs again. They cannot give out condoms, which, other than abstinence, is the only way to protect against STDs and STIs. If being Catholic means being committed to the dignity of the human spirit, and that dignity requires, or at least allows people to not align their gender identity with their sex at birth, then equal respect and commitment to human dignity requires the university to provide protection against disease and possible death from engaging in the very human act of sex. The modern world is sexual. The modern world does not pretend that sex does not exist. How can we be the modern Jesuit educational experience if we do not fit into the modern world? How can we fit into the modern world when we limit our care for our students' bodies? Fairfield can be Catholic and serve its students by being consistently committed to their human dignity, and not by being afraid of that commitment in the sexual arena. By doing so, Fairfield will live up to being the modern Jesuit educational experience, and its motto to care for the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Anything less sacrifices the university, its students, their human dignity, and their very safety in the name of out-of-date principles that have fallen out of step with the real world and only put their students at risk. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Can we just do one more round of applause for our students? I really appreciate just their vulnerability, their honesty, their integrity. I'm going to say honesty again because there are faculty from these institutions right in front of these students, and they still, I'm going to say it, didn't care, and they were bold and honest in their truth. So I do have a couple questions for them because I think it's important from a staff standpoint when we think about the topics that were discussed here. I want to circle back to your amazing topic and a little bit with Katharine as well. When we think about Eve, right? Because I think at a religious institution, right? I was a young girl growing up in a private school, so I understand Eve is just like, she messed it up for us all, right? Like she's the one that messed it up for us. But when we think about sex and when we think about literature, right? The Bible, right? This is where we're supposed to be founded on, if you will. From your both experiences in thinking about religion or not, Catholic or not, however the university claims to be, do you think that our literature or just our knowledge about contraception or just safe sex on campus will ever change?
I don't know. I think it really depends on where people stand. I truly think that most of the sex you see in the Bible is rape. It's very violent. It's not pretty, it's not erotic, it's just assault, for the most part. And I think that sets a very clear example of women are supposed to just accept what comes to them. And if that's what you're basing your educational practices on, you can't change something that has been written so long ago that so many people rely on. But if that's what you're basing everything on, nothing will change. So we've got to start looking at the Bible differently. We have to say, okay, some group of people took all the writings back then and decided these 4 Gospels were the important ones: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Why? Why those 4? There's a Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Why is she not in there? There's so many other people, Gospel of Thomas, that could have been in the Bible. And these priests, way back when, said, no, these are the 4. What else was left out? And what can we circle back to that potentially could give us another option?
Yeah, and Liz, I know you talked a little bit about just like the villainization of women in literature. We think about Eve, just thinking along the lines of what Katharine was saying, do you personally think that Eve was the villain? Even if we think about the Bible, right? I already know your answer's gonna be just the way that a lot of women are like, oh, like we wouldn't have to go through these things, like if Eve had to just listen, right? So tell me a little bit about your thoughts, even when you think about just like how the Bible is almost interpreted. I think one of the things I like to think, like people like to use the Bible as a buffet, right? They pick and choose like what benefits them at certain times. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, so I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic high school. I was confirmed, did all of that stuff. So I have heard the story about Adam and Eve a million different times, and I always, before college, understood it as she was the one who did it wrong. She messed up. She got Adam to eat the fruit. I didn't think it made her the villain of the story. I thought she just messed up, but I did view it in a very generic lens. And when I came to college, I took Dr. Miller's Shakespeare class, which taught me a little bit more about that, and I took Dr. Epstein's All About Eve class. And a lot of different aspects were pointed out to me. There's so much more than how the Bible and that specific story is being taught in Catholic education. There's aspects like, well, if they were the first people, how do they know they're being lied to? They don't know what a lie is. So much stuff that is not taught in Catholic education today. But yes, I did originally when I was growing up. I took the generic response that everyone else taught me.
Right, absolutely. And even myself, just like growing up, when you hear about like who Eve is, just like, oh, like she's definitely like the wrong person. She messed it up for us. But even transitioning a little bit into Rebecca's topic, thinking about women's health issues, I really liked one of the things that you mentioned, just about like the glass ceiling, right? Do you believe that our institutions are helping us break these glass ceilings, or do you think that they're almost kind of teaching us to be okay with the ceiling and just adjust? What are your thoughts about that?
So I think that they are definitely not helping us break through the glass ceiling and almost kind of teaching women to just go along and be submissive and kind of take whatever challenges come your way. I don't think it's necessarily like empowering women as like a collective like institution, and we can even see this just from like the events of the recent election. It seems like the general culture is that like women are not in control of their like own bodily autonomy, but also like what they experience outside. And this is like also present outside of like semi-outside of the healthcare field, but with like the dialogue surrounding like rape victims and survivors, and how like, oh, what were you wearing?
Yes.
So it's very much like not helping female empowerment, I would say, just the general culture. So it would take a fundamental shift of even just things like our dialogue and things like hysteria to kind of break through that glass ceiling.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for bringing up the term empowerment, right? Because I want to transition a little bit to Faize and Genesis when you're both sharing, just some of like your personal experiences and anecdotes, if you will, just about microaggressions and dominating, very male-dominating fields, and just want to take a second to empower you both, and even just like channeling in the audience, because even if you heard our students speaking, they're trained to think like you're gonna be outnumbered already. Like, oh, like I've never seen someone as pretty as you be in this field, right? So we're already channeling our students to think in these ways, in the systemic structures of which our education system is founded on. So for our two ladies, again, thank you for sharing your experiences. And I know that those experiences are certainly not stopping you from pursuing these fields. So if both of you wouldn't mind sharing, what if one motivating factor that is continuing to drive you, despite these systems of inequality and patriarchy, if you will, to keep you going, although you're facing stereotypes and microaggressions?
I would say a lot of support from other females in the field. I have a lot of friends that are on the pre-dental career, and I also know a lot of female dentists that always like encourage me and support me through the entire like journey.
Yeah, I can agree with that as well. I would say my parents are a really big support factor for me as well. My dad is actually in criminal justice, and he really pushes me to, accomplish whatever I want to. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. But also the fact that we're in 2024 and we still see things like the first woman to do this, the first black woman to do this, things like that. We're still seeing those things, in the society, in the time that we're in now. So knowing that women still have not, made their way to all of these different spaces and all of these different areas yet really pushes me to move forward and just, break barriers and accomplish whatever I want to, because, I want to show other young women, that they can do this.
Thank you. And speaking on the fact of can do this, I want to transition to Morgan very quickly. You're doing some great work on your campus. There is certainly no hiding that. So public recognition and kudos to you just for the great work that you're doing and continuing to do to empower and bring some more feminism to your campus. I do have a question for you. In my role, when working with students, we have this idea of institutional neutrality, right? So our university, they do not send out emails when things in the world happen. They do not send out statements. They don't send out posts or Instagram, anything, right? Like our students are just forced to kind of just face these issues on their own or seek guidance and counsel from faculty and staff that they trust. But one of the things that I'm noticing is that sometimes there is a fear from students on these religious campuses that they fear that they can't mobilize, that they can't, advocate and really march and do protests on campus because they're in fear of reactions from faculty, from staff, some of our students that are undocumented, their fear that things are going to happen to them or things are going to come from their families or whatever the case may be. So can you talk a little bit about, just a question for you, do you think that our institutions are creating spaces, right? When we talk about caring for the whole person, right? Sometimes caring for the whole person means advocating for people and fighting and, going out for social justice. So do you think that our institutions are providing spaces for students to mobilize, or does it really just come from that inner will, like, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna ask for an apology later?
Yeah, so I think that that's a wonderful question. I think, I obviously can't speak for, every other institution or every other Jesuit institution, but I know that in my experience at University of Detroit Mercy, they tend to do a really great job at trying to make supportive spaces for students. We do tend to put out statements when there are bad things that do happen in the world. We have a lot of sessions that are available for students when there are times of crises, when students need support groups, we have those available for them. But when there are times when students need some extra support, students do try to work together to create extra spaces, because sometimes, students don't want to go to their professor and talk to them about how they feel. We do try to work together. So although I do think institutions could be doing better, and although some of them do a great job, I think that ultimately it is up to the students to try to mobilize and work together, because historically, if you look at social movements, it is the students, the college students, who were running these movements, who were mobilizing, who were protesting, who were pushing forward for change, and were working together to protest, to march the streets, to go and advocate for policy change, and to pressure their politicians. And it was a lot of other people too, but at the end of the day, if you look back historically, it's usually college students who were on the right side of history. And it can be really hard, and it's very draining at times because there's a lot of bad things going on in the world. But I think that it is college students who need more support from their institutions. But I think that although my institution is doing great, I think I can't speak for others, so I think we should all collectively be trying to do better to support them.
Thank you so much. Can we just give our panelists a round of applause? I also just want to let you know that I actually lied to them. I told them that I was probably going to ask them 1 or 2 questions. So they are ready and prepared for any questions that you might have. So please, we're going to open it up. I see Dr. Kelly has a question.
Yes, thank you so much. I absolutely adored hearing all of these talks, and we were so proud of you. I wanted to ask something of both campuses, so students from both campuses. do you believe that the men in your classrooms in these Jesuit schools are starting to lean social conservative directions? And as a faculty member, I don't know necessarily what people really think sometimes. I don't know if you do, but do you have stories?
They're ready for this question.
So anyone, all of you.
Yeah, just from a standpoint of where we are in the world.
Fairfield. Yeah.
At Fairfield in particular, we are a predominantly white institution. We are predominantly middle upper class. At least that's what you see mostly on campus. We're predominantly Catholic, which makes sense. Yeah, I would say that often people lead conservative, not necessarily in class. They won't necessarily say it in class, but they will definitely. Some people will say it in class. We've had those, but some people will definitely talk about it on social media, on campus, between themselves, and it creates this really difficult dynamic of how can I be myself when I'm clearly not accepted by others. I have a friend who transferred after his first semester because he is gay and didn't feel comfortable on campus at all with anybody, with any of the males. He felt comfortable with me and like the theater group, but he didn't feel comfortable anywhere else, and so after one semester he transferred. That wasn't the only reason he transferred, but it was a major reason. And so I think that that's really clear, even not within class, but within the dynamic in general.
Jumping into your social media argument, I am always on, we have this anonymous app Faize at our school.
Oh, okay.
I hate it, but I am a student journalist, so I always look on it for, story ideas and stuff. And post-election, there was a very big surge of people posting AI photos of Kamala Harris dressed as a hooker, saying, "I'm glad a whore is not our president." Very, very demeaning words. And even though it's anonymous and it could be people trying to get people riled up, I think it speaks volumes to what people truly feel at our school. I'm not sure if other schools feel similarly. I was speaking to a friend who also their school has that app. She said they didn't have any issues. So that's something that I just wanted to point out.
There's a lot of your body, my choice being repeated over and over again.
Yeah, and we have even, the three of us, Liz, Katharine, and myself, we were in Introduction to Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies last semester. And even in the classroom, we had a male student who would often try to talk over us and was very vocal about his beliefs, and it made it very hard to even get a word in and speak up for ourselves. So I think it's definitely the conservative values are evident in that, and even us being able to vocalize our feeling. And it definitely creates tension on campus, especially after the events of the recent election, because just as a woman thinking about it, if people are not respecting you and trying to take away rights, how are you supposed to feel comfortable on campus?
Yeah.
There were two other guys in that class who sat in the corner, and every time this other student spoke up, would motion, shut up, stop it. So we were all laughing about it, but it was interesting, and our professor, Dr. Hull, would often shut him down.
I would say no. The three of you did an amazing job in this class of responding to them in substantive ways. Just brilliant arguments, and times pointing out to him that he hadn't finished reading the chapter. What he was looking for was at the end. So kudos, bravo to the three of you and the other women in the class, and Morgen in the class.
I'm curious about what it looks like from, in responding to Dr. Kelly's question, from the University of Detroit nursing standpoint.
Yes. So the divide, if you look at the chart, I love charts, I love graphs. It is very, very alarming. The Gen Z divide, looking at males going socially conservative.
It's 36.
Yeah, and women going pretty liberal. They're going in opposite directions. Okay, and in class, my women in politics class, the men who are in there, they're awesome, you know, but there are other classes that I've been in. I take a lot of, again, political science, philosophy, law classes, and the women that are in there are a lot of them, they're exceptional. But the men who are in there, it's kind of what you guys said, like, they like to try to speak over us. I've had to have conversations with professors who didn't even realize that this was happening, typically male professors who are very nice, wonderful people, but they don't see it happening. And like, as a feminist in the classroom, I'm always aware of like seeing this happen, and I've had to have conversations with them like, do you realize that this one guy is speaking over the 20 other women in the class? And they don't realize, and like, eventually, you know, it gets fixed. But like, they've had to have department meetings in the philosophy department because of this, because it's happening in multiple classes. And like, I think it's unfortunate that it takes students speaking out in order for these issues to be corrected, but I do think that I do think it's great that we are fortunate enough that we have an institution that does take action, and I think a big thing, especially for my college, the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences, is that we have a newer dean. She came in like fall of 2022, I think, and she is a feminist theorist, which is very great. Dean Barishka, who is like from Fairfield, so like, yeah, that is super awesome. Very good plus for us.
I want to say that Detroit Mercy, in my opinion, does a very good job of like including women, and the guys that are in my classes that are very kind. I feel like very like bossy with them. I always put them in their place, and I feel like they take it pretty well, and they become like more self-aware in a sense. And I have several guys that are in the Women and Gender Studies minor that I like. What is it? I inspired them to go that route, and they really enjoy it so far. And we always have like very important conversations together, and I bring up situations that like me as a woman I would go through, but they would never have to go through, and I feel like that makes them very aware and grateful, and I'm very happy that I have them to be my friends.
Yes.
So yeah. And I was also gonna say that for the Eve topic you guys were discussing, women aren't like really given credit for how influential they are. So for Eve to even be able to convince Adam to eat the apple, I think that's very influential of her. So, and maybe Adam ate the apple first and he blamed it on Eve. So,
Right, who
Actually,
knows?
you didn't, but you are onto something really important. So, there's an 18th century Enlightenment thinker from Massachusetts, Judith
Yeah.
Sargent Murray, and she argues, she asked the question, what was Eve guilty of? And the response of, she wanted more knowledge. So how is that disreputable? Why did Adam take a bite of the apple? Because Eve did it. So there are different ways of interpreting the story, as you just pointed out.
and they want to use her as the scapegoat.
Right.
That they do.
We do have time for more questions. I see some hands. You had your hand up for a long time, yes.
What advice would you give to faculty and staff about how they can support you, or what's something a faculty and staff member done that helped you out?
That's a really good question.
I was gonna say like having surveys both before the semester begins and after it ends. I felt like those were really important to me, and it was like very comfortable for me to speak about it and like talk about issues that I had that were ongoing in the class that I just didn't feel comfortable bringing up in person.
I completely agree. I actually have one of my professors who teaches philosophy. She's coming to speak here tomorrow. And she has done like multiple check-ins with us as students like throughout like the semester just to see how we're doing and if we need help with anything. And I think that's definitely like setting a great example for us. And as far as like in the sciences, my professor who does do research and really prioritizes like explaining how like medications might not be effective for females because they're not actually tested on like women. I think it's really important to like set the example as faculty members and have those conversations with students.
I don't know if this is an option for every class. I'm not a STEM person, so I don't know really how those classes run. But I've found that in most of my humanities classes, the ones that are entirely discussion based, and this is coming from someone who does not like public speaking, I am the most comfortable talking about my experiences. Dr. Hill's class was nothing else I'd ever taken. I was so comfortable admitting to people my identity, my experiences. And even though we had that one student who was very, I felt welcomed by the entire class. And I've had other classes in those formats, and all of them are the most comforting. So I would say in that format, if you can.
I would also jump in and say, get educated and pay attention. It is not my job as a queer woman to explain my existence to you. I exist, I am here, that's it. So get educated yourself about what's going on and what is happening, and then pay attention to see if you see it in your classes, because the only way to solve any problem is to first recognize there is one. And so we have to be educated about it. We have to see that there's a different option in order to recognize the problem, in order to then solve it.
Also, I know as professors that it is a general rule, like, my students shouldn't really know my political beliefs. They shouldn't know every one of my values. I should be neutral in the classroom. But as a student, my favorite professors are the ones where I know they have very strong values. They will challenge their students. It's very hard to have professors where they will let some comments fly. And I think that when, I don't know, like, you guys get it. There are certain things that are said in the classroom where there are comments made that are just not okay. And I feel like I have heard and seen professors like letting things fly that they should be challenged. Like, these students, when you're a professor, you should be challenging your students to be better. And I'm a big fan of, like, the Socratic method. I like when my professors ask questions like, are you sure? Why do you think that? I like when my professors don't necessarily insert their beliefs. Obviously, you shouldn't do stuff like that, but just use the knowledge that you have, and don't be afraid to challenge some of the assumptions that your students have when they make bold claims. I've been challenged by my professors, and I've had a change of heart in the middle of class. I've had to sit through classes because I've said something stupid and I get embarrassed, but, like, I sit on that and I come into the next class and I realize that I'm wrong and I own it, and I respect my professor more because of it, because that professor has made me grow as an intellectual, as a scholar, and as a person. So those professors who want you to become better and aren't afraid to challenge you in class and really work with you, not to embarrass you, but to, like, work with you as a student, I think that those are the best types of professors. Not because they're, like, too afraid to embarrass you or anything, but because they really, really just want to see you get better.
We do have time for maybe one or two more questions. Yes.
I have a question that is somewhat related to this. I agree that you like professors that state their opinions, but actually some students told me in confidence that professors are very liberals and they always state their opinion, and they are really afraid of consequences if they actually express their conservative views. And they told me that they are continuously lying and taking a much milder position in the written work that is given to professors to sort of please the professor. So I'm not even sure what I'm asking, but I think it's really, really problematic that professors are not receiving an authentic words, or the fact that the students feels that they need to lie. So I'm really not sure. I guess I would like you to comment on this. And if you think it's true, I don't know. I mean, this came from a Fairfield University student, so it's not that I'm making up the story.
No, yeah, I have definitely heard the same. Like, again, in a lot of my political science classes and, like, my philosophy classes, I have professors where again, like, I'm kind of left, and I have them make comments, and I'm like, that's a little bit questionable. Like, maybe you should keep that to yourself. But at the same time, I feel like my professors have always prefaced that their opinions are their own. They don't want to impact their students' points of views, and they always try to really emphasize that, like, they want their students to form their own opinions, and they want their students to also challenge the things that they say. I have challenged things that my professors have said, and I think that that's part of the challenge of, you know, being a professor, and like why it's such a hard line to walk, and why so many professors don't do it is because you don't want to make your students feel uncomfortable. And I've also heard my peers say the same thing. I don't want to write a paper about why I think abortion is wrong because I think I'm going to get an F on it. But the thing is, when you're writing these papers, what matters is that you're finding scholarly sources. So if you can't find scholarly sources to support the points that you're making in your academic papers, that's kind of the big issue. And I feel like that's what these professors tend to try to nail in. Because at the end of the day, if you don't follow the rubrics that are provided, it's not really your points of views that are the issue, it's the way that you are presenting your points of views, because you're not using the proper resource or arguments or evidence to actually support what you're saying. So it's less about what your views are and more about how you're presenting them.
If I could jump in on this from the same idea from a Fairfield standpoint, if professors could say from the get-go, look, your opinions are your opinions, and that's okay. I'm not going to grade you based on that. I'm going to grade you based off of, did you find the right sources? Did you use the right grammar? Did you cite the sources in the correct manner? Did you follow the rubric in this particular way that I am asking? I'm not grading you based off of the content itself. I'm grading you based off of how well can you persuade me? How well can you prove your thesis? That's what the grade is. That's not me grading your opinion. I think that that will start to help students feel more comfortable, because when you take the grade out of the equation, then suddenly things feel a lot lighter.
Yeah, basically just make it clear that like your students, they can challenge you as a professor. It should go both ways. You guys teach each other.
Can we please give them a round of applause? Really quickly, we are 3 minutes left for time, but I do just want to give folks, if they want a chance to come up and chat with the students individually or one-on-one. Really quickly, from the administrative staff standpoint, one of the things that I've learned, the best way to support our students is to just ask them what they want. Because I think a lot of times we have our own opinions, beliefs, and values. I certainly do. And I'm like always ready to hop in the ring and fight with them, but sometimes our students don't want that. Sometimes our students want one approach, or one approach might work for one class, and another approach might work. You might have to do something different or shake it up for a different class. So just encouraging you all to just think about what our students want, and just simply asking them what is the best approach and how can we best support them, and just encouraging us all to continue to create safe spaces for our students on campus to come to us, to share their opinions, their beliefs, their values. So thank you all again so much. It's been a pleasure working with you all to get to this panel. Please feel free to come up and chat with our students and ask them any questions. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.